The pivotal day in my life was the 10th of March 1971. I think, coming out of the Troubles around 1969, there was almost a relaxed atmosphere in Belfast. There was a bit of a lull, I suppose, after 1969. Obviously, the British Army were in Belfast and across Northern Ireland. But things began to crank up again in terms of attacks on security forces, attacks on specific targets. On this particular day, these three Scottish soldiers, two of them were brothers, John and Joseph McCaig, 17 and 18-year-old, and the other guy was Dougal McCaughey, who was 23, were off duty. They left their barracks at Girdwood at about 12:30 in the afternoon. They were due to come back to barracks about 6:30. And like squaddies do, they went out to get a couple of pints. They were drinking in a number of bars in the city centre. Mooney's, Bodega, and they ended up in Kelly's Cellars. They were squaddies, so short hair, all spoke with Scottish accents, and I suppose probably stuck out like a sore thumb, and quite, I'm sure in the course of conversations that they would have had, they would have indicated that they were soldiers, or it would have come across that they were soldiers. The story is that about 6:30, they were, along with two men, that they were invited to a party. Obviously more alcohol and probably a few girls thrown in, and they left the Kelly Cellars about 6:30 on the Wednesday evening. And they were driven to Whitebray at Ligoniel. They got out of the vehicle that they were in and they were shot. One was shot once, one was shot twice, and the third was shot 3 times, all in the back of the head. They were found probably within 10 or 15 minutes of them being shot. There were a number of young children who came upon them, as did a local resident who had driven up Whitebray. From what the HET report says, that those who left the bar with them may not necessarily have been the shooters. So it's quite possible that those who abducted them brought them to Whitebray, and those who shot them were lying in wait for them to arrive. Later that night, people were aware that there had been a shooting at Whitebray or at Ligoniel, and it was more the next day, sort of news broadcast, radio, TV, and then sort of following up with the usual paper outlets, Belfast Telegraph, Irish News, Newsletter, that were showing the scenes of where the boys were murdered. There was, I suppose, a degree of shock, probably. I mean, that's maybe a bit blasé to say, bearing in mind that we'd been through the Troubles, the beginning of the Troubles in terms of 1969, 1970, but there was disbelief, and then there was anger, and then there was, I suppose, the people were, grieving for the families. So there were cards being dropped at the barracks. There were people coming up with boxes of biscuits and buns and all sorts of things. Just people trying to say that they were obviously thinking about their colleagues at this particular time. It certainly enraged people, the brutality of their murder, the fact that they were so young, 17, 18 and 23. I suppose from a personal point of view, I would have been around the same age at the time of their murder. Within a couple of days, the pub that would have been on White Bray was actually blown up, and within I think a day or two, I think the UVF actually claimed responsibility for it. But in actual fact, I don't think that pub itself had anything. There was no connection with it. It was the pubs in the city centre, and it was the Republicans from Ardoyne who had actually targeted the three boys. On the day of their funerals, literally Belfast came to a standstill. There were about 25,000 people at the cenotaph beside the City Hall. Workers down tools in Gallagher's tobacco factory, in Mackey's, in the shipyard, the power station at Kilroot. People made their way to the War Memorial in Carrickfergus from there, and there were services held across the city. Post their murder, it changed military legislation. The military stopped sending anyone under the age of 18 to any conflict zone, irrespective of whether it was Northern Ireland or halfway across the world. They changed their legislation. But I suppose politically, there were significant changes afoot, so to speak. The level of violence that was being visited upon the community by the Provisional IRA was on the increase quite significantly, and in fact, I suppose by the end of 1971, there were significant numbers of people who had been murdered, either directly being shot or indirectly as the result of bomb attacks. And in actual fact, halfway through the year, in August of 1971, the government introduced internment on the 9th of August. That changed the climate, certainly for a lot of us. Over the years from 1971, when the boys were murdered, to now, the people who lived around Ballysullen and Ligoniel would have laid flowers at White Bray on the anniversary of their death. And more recently, the Old Park Cave Hill branch of the Royal British Legion mounted a fundraising campaign to actually build a permanent memorial, and we now actually have two memorials. There's one which is a stone cairn at the site, or as close to as based on the photographic evidence that we had to where the boys were murdered. And then a more substantial memorial in Ballysullen Park. Both of these were unveiled in 2009. And the families of John and Joe and Dougal were in attendance at those events. So they've never been forgotten. I talk about it as a pivotal day in my life, but it was a pivotal day for the people of Northern Ireland. It changed people's lives because it quite literally was the first step towards the abyss that people continually talked about. It certainly changed people's lives quite dramatically.